Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick. This is a podcast for indie writers. I'm Kat Caldwell, a short story writer, novelist, and book coach. Here on the podcast, we sometimes talk to guests about all things story, and sometimes it's just me giving you tips and tricks to making your writing better. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick. I'm Kat Caldwell, and this is episode 252 of the podcast. And as you might have noticed, it is going out late this week because I recorded without the mic on. I know, things that happen when you are a one woman show. Happy New Year, everybody. We actually didn't have a show last week because I had no voice. I think I'm pretty recovered as I re-record this. I'm not coughing, so that will, help your eardrums. So I want to head out into the new year in 2025. My focus is to write more of the books that I have in my head now that I am finished with a couple of other things that are more coaching based that I did last year and business based that I did last year. I mean, I still got 2 books out last year, so I have to remember that, I still write my books. Like, I think I'm a little too hard on myself. So we are going to get into a lot of fiction and author mindset this year. And honestly, I'm going to be talking to you guys about memoir and nonfiction writing as well, getting our books done. If you have just stumbled upon this show, there are lots of other episodes as well to listen to. I interview people many times. About half of the episodes, maybe more, are interviews of authors and other people who are in the publishing industry. So check those out. If you have been here for a while, or if you're new, would you subscribe and like, or whatever the app that you're on tells you to do. If you prefer to watch these, we are on YouTube. I always say we, but you and me. That's how I think about it. If you want to see my office, see me, see my guests, you can go to YouTube, Pencils and Lipstick over there. Otherwise, the rest of us are probably listening in the car, on our walks, playing with the kids, whatever, watching the kids go down the snow hills, wherever you're living. And so this is on every single audio app. If you have commercials, that's not my fault. I don't put commercials in here. So please like and subscribe and maybe leave a review. And, if you get commercials, don't leave a review that's annoying because, again, they're not mine. So as I said, this is partly interview show if you're new and partly sometimes just me talking at you. So I have a couple new clients this year, 2025. I have my own goals, which I talked about, I think, two weeks ago. Just the way that I look at goals and how I do things a little bit differently than I used to do. I no longer have like strict deadlines. I have sort of cloudy deadlines in my head because hardcore deadlines I usually miss, and then I feel bad about missing them, and then I kind of spiral out in my own head. So I have this idea this year of what I want to get done, what I probably will get done, and that's a little bit different. I actually have right here, you can't see it even if you're watching me on YouTube. I have my calendar hanging. I have my whiteboard here. I know I'm feeling like really organized. You can see the back of me looks typically organized. I usually like move it around a bit. It kind of changes on you, but I'm not actually that organized. So I'm feeling really good about this. My whiteboard is empty though, so whatever. I still haven't put the goals up there. But my goal this year is to finish the historical romance trilogy across the English Channel, which I think is what we are going to call it. I know it's been like crossing Zamora, but I feel like that's, it's just difficult to say in English. I don't like how it sounds in English, crossing Zamora. Yeah, it's not as pretty. So that one is actually has been edited. it still had some issues. So I am fixing those issues, but now I can see them clearly. And so that will probably be done, but I'm not really in a hurry because I'm not bringing it out yet. And I've already started on Claire's and the novella. I have them both plotted out, and I know I'm plotting. That's weird too, huh? So I have a couple really big things coming up in my life. Like I'm going to India for 10 days on a missions trip, just exciting and scary at the same time. And so I need like headspace for that. I know. I get myself into these situations. And then, so, I'll probably have the historical fiction coming out. I'll probably launching will be focused on those. But I also have the contemporary fiction series that I want to write that I have lots of ideas for. And one book is about 2/3 of the way done. So I would like to finish 2 of those. And when I say finish, for me, a book that's finished, that I consider finished, would be ready to go to the editor, not necessarily like finished, ready to be published. So that's what I mean when I say that, like in my head to myself, in order for kind of 2026 to start out with those coming out. And then I have that one book in my head that I really want to write that is based on a short story, and it's just in my head, and I don't know if it will get done. I don't know. So I'm actually still coaching. If you guys are looking for a book coach, I do not take long-term clients because I have found that that's not necessarily beneficial to everybody. I like working with shorter term clients because I think you need like a shot of encouragement and help. And then a lot of times you just want to go and like write and then maybe come back and get more encouragement and help. So the sessions that I've had with my new clients and the sessions that I've had with myself have inspired today's talk, and I have introed enough. We are going to get into it. Be sure to send this podcast out to people who are, who are trying to write, because what we are going to talk about today is something is trying to get your fiction story really organized in a way that you can actually see the end, and that you can actually finish that manuscript. I know a lot of times we have this goal to finish the manuscript. And when I say finish, I mean ready to send to an editor, not just the first draft. And I've worked with several people, and I've talked to many other coaches who have worked with several authors who have been working on the same thing for years and years and years and years. And I want to find that way to like make things click for you today and this year so that you finish your book. Okay. So because writing your first story can take a really long time, and a lot of times you only want to write one story, perhaps that's your goal now. I challenge that you will probably get addicted to it and want to write another one after you write your first one, but you want to finish your book. You want it in the hands of readers, so it has to be finished, right? And I do want to encourage you that when it does go to the editor, yes, it will come back with work to be done, but it's less overwhelming, and you'll be able to see things even clearer once you get that feedback. But in order for you to not waste your money sending it to an editor, we're going to go over a couple things today. So I want you to think about your main character at the beginning of your story. Most likely, you have an excellent idea of your character. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times when I ask people about their character and like, just tell me about your character, they tell me a lot of physical qualities about their character, a lot of maybe quirks about their character. It's almost as though the writer has sort of fallen in love with the best version of the character, right? Especially if they have worked on the book for a very long time. So I'm not necessarily talking about the physical aspects or the quirkiness of your character. I am asking you, who is your character? What kind of person are they? If I were to tell you about my best friend, I would tell you that she is highly intelligent, extremely competent with her hands. She can fix anything, just things that I didn't even know could be fixed. She is funny. She is sarcastic, but she is the most kind person I've ever known. She is the most patient person with children I've ever known. She's insightful. She can make you feel like she has known you your entire life. She has capacity for relationships that are beyond my energy. She is just like the best person that you could possibly know. Okay, so yes, maybe I gave you a few quirks, but see, I didn't give you much physicality of what my best friend looks like, but I trying to give you an outline of who she is, right? And then I could get it real personal with it, but I'm not going to with my best friend. But I want you to get very personal with your character. How do they respond to things? Are they an avoider? Do they rush in head first? Are they confrontational? Do they move away from confrontational? Then I want you to think about your inciting incident, which you probably have an idea of. And this is the incident, this is the part in the book in the beginning that pushes your character out of their comfort zone, if you don't know that already. This is the thing that is going to make them sort of burst on the scene of the story. It is the reason why the story continues, right? Let's say, this is sad, but this idea just popped in my head. Let's say your character is getting married and you're introducing them to the reader and everything's going great. And then they're driving to the honeymoon and they get in an accident and the new husband dies. And then she gets out of the car and realizes that everything that she was, like the entire path that she thought she was on, has come to a crashing halt, right? And she has to take another path. That would typically be the inciting incident. Or you could even ratchet it up and say somebody comes and shoots her husband in the head, and this is getting really gory really quickly, and looks at her and says he deserved no less. And you go, what just happened? Because her entire life just turned upside down, and she doesn't even know if she really knows the person that she was going to spend the rest of her life with, right? It's the inciting incident. It's when the person comes home and finds their partner in bed with someone else. It is when they get fired. It is when they get the new job. It is when the aliens come and burn the farm, and somebody else shows up and tells him that he's like the only one that can save the whole galaxy, right? This is the inciting incident, and it makes the character realize that life is about to change completely. And the reason that there's a story is because they sort of follow that change. Okay. Now, how is your character at that inciting incident? Why is the inciting incident so powerful to this character? And why are they going to make the decisions that they are about to make? In order to know this, so let's say, I'm thinking of a book, but I can't think of the title, but there's a book where her husband just doesn't come home. I can see the cover, but anyway, I think it's Laura Davis is the author. So what I'm asking you is, okay, the husband doesn't come home or the wife doesn't come home. Why is your character deciding to investigate themselves? Like investigate the disappearance rather than sitting at home sipping tea waiting for the police to come back with reports. There should be a why. Because it goes into their personality, their character. Maybe they're hiding something. Maybe they suspected their partner of something. there should be a why as to that's making them make these decisions, okay? Which is going to help you understand your main character. And it's going to help your reader not go, yeah, but why? We don't want our readers to say, yeah, but why? We want our readers to have enough snippets about the character that they say, oh yeah, maybe I wouldn't do that, but I understand why this character is doing that, right? So when you think of why they are responding to the inciting incident like this, then I want you to go back and continue to ask why in order to get to the story that's happening in their life before they stepped into the book, before the first page of the story, right? So let's go back to the poor new husband that just got shot in the head. Let's say that your main character had waited for the perfect guy. She was already 38. She thought her chances were gone. She meets this guy. He's this everything that she's ever wanted. He was completely worth the wait. They had a whirlwind romance, got married. Everything was great. And now he's gone, right? And so that now she's determined to figure out who stole this life from her because she has waited so long for it. Okay. I don't know, something like that. So figure out who your character was beforehand. What's their story? What's their backstory? And I know that everyone says that your story shouldn't be full of backstory, and it shouldn't, but you should know the backstory so that you can allude to the backstory as you write the story. No, we don't like pages and pages of backstory usually. There are some books and writers who do it so well you barely notice. But you probably don't notice it as a reader, but there are snippets of backstory in well-written books that cause you to know the main character in such a way that it's as though you did read pages and pages of backstory. Okay, so that's what we want to do. We want to know the backstory so well that it can be like those snippets can be dropped in authentically throughout the story so that your reader thinks that they know the main character's entire life story as they go through the present story. Okay. So this will also help you understand how the character is, how they respond, and this will help you then naturally progress through the plot points, having the character respond appropriately to everything that you're about to throw at them. And this should help you in the muddy middle. It really should. Um, so in order to know all the natural habits of the main character, you need to know who they were before the story. And one of the things that happens if you don't know who they are before the story is you will create this character out of thin air. And lots of people talk about this. Lisa Crone talks about this. Lots of craft books talk about this. You create this character out of thin air and behave in such a way, and then they sort of behave in a different way, then they behave in a different way, and then the story ends. Or, I mean, and at least at that point, they're somewhat changing. You have the possibility, though, that you will write a character that behaves in a certain way and then behaves in a different way because you need them to change, but you don't really know why they're changing, and you don't give the reader any indication as to why they're changing. Maybe because it's just true love or whatever. It's just very surface, the reasons for it, and then you get to the end and they change a little bit and they learn something, or find true love or save the galaxy or whatever, and that's the end. There are lots of books written like this, but if you want your book to be filled with characters that will stay with the reader, there really needs to be a reason why. So if you are taking on the grumpy trope, the grump and the neighbor, I don't know, that's a lame title, but there really should be a reason why that person is grumpy. So in A Man Called Ove, there's a reason why he's grumpy, right? And it's actually just a buildup in his life of why he has learned to respond. I mean, he wasn't like this super bubbly person anyway, but then things that have happened in his life have sort of pushed him into this response, that mechanism that feels like it's protecting him, right? And then when his wife dies, everything is kind of shattered and he has no reason to live. And, um, and then he learns that there's a reason to live, right? So there should really be a reason for why this person is a grump, and a real understandable reason for them, like path for them to get out of it, because otherwise they're just an unlikable character. And I read a story, I won't tell you what, over the break, that I was just like, this person just, it's not believable because they're just not nice. Like they're such a grump that they would be annoying. They're not even like, I don't know why this person has spent enough time with them to fall in love with them, like to even give them a chance. And clearly not everyone writes that trope like that. But I'm just warning you, there should be a reason why and a clear path forward on how they can change. So I talked to one of my clients about making your character too perfect. This is really old advice, but to be fair, not everyone has been in this writing thing as long as me, and I have to remember that. And so sometimes people haven't heard of this before, but there is a tendency that writers have to create their character in their fullest and most perfect form from the beginning of the story. And a lot of times this happens when this character has been with us in our head for a very long time. So I'm going to use Casablanca for this because most people have seen it. And if you haven't seen it, it's probably free on YouTube. So when we think about Casablanca, we usually think about Rick, the main character, in his already hero form. That's what all the posters show him as, right? If you've seen it before, that's probably the mental image that you get. Kind of that last scene image of him making the right choice, being the hero that he was supposed to be, and, walking off into the fog, ready to fight the Nazis, right? He is like the hero of the story and of the world. But he is not like that at the beginning at all. In fact, he's semi-unlikable at the beginning. Even though everyone actually does like him, he has this, persona that inspires people to like want to be around him. He kind of commands a presence, but he's not very nice. Like he even says flat out, I don't stick my neck out for anyone, right? And he's actually not very kind when his former love enters the club. And I mean, he's just not very nice. If you go back and watch him kind of scrubbing away the stars in your eyes, because that's what I had to do. You just look at it coldly from the point of view of like an editor or a writer, you realize that he is an extremely flawed character. But the way that he progresses through the story, bit by bit, he changes a little bit. And he's actually changing back into the hero that he was before. Like he was poised to be the hero anyway, but then he got his heart broken. And so he sort of like retreated within himself and became hardened. And now it's cracking open and he is going back to being the hero. And actually fully realizing his hero self, right, by the end of the story. And that's what we want to do with our main characters. We want them to fully realize their hero selves by the end of the story. So be sure when you are describing your character at the beginning that you are not actually describing your character as they should be at the end. And if you realize that you are describing your character as you actually want them to be, fully realized within the person as the person that they should be at the end, then you need to ask yourself, what did it take for that person to become this character? And find the things that you need to strip away from them to make them the character at the beginning that is overtly flawed. Does that make sense? I wish that you could tell me. You can tell me. It just take will take a couple hours as you listen to this and then write to me. But you can go to catcaldwell.com to the contact form and you can send me a question, or if you're on my newsletter, you can just hit reply to any of the emails there in case you have a question about that. So now that we've thought about them at the beginning, and now I've challenged you to make sure that they aren't like that at the end, this goes into the next question of, if you're not visualizing them as the grand hero that they should be at the end, now go ahead and visualize them of what they should be, like who they should be at the end of this story, at the end of these sets of challenges that you're going to put in front of them. Who are they as the fully realized hero of the story? What does that mean for them? Not mean in a universal sense. What does this mean for them in their story? Who should they be in order to be the fully formed person? Not that they're perfect, but they are the person that they were created to be by the end of this story, right? And if you are writing a series, you probably only want them to be, bit by bit becoming that person. If it's following one person throughout the whole series. So in the same vein, as you're thinking about your character and who they should be at the end of this story, it could help, if you're really stuck on that, to think about how you want your readers to feel at the end of the story. What do you want them to learn? What do you want them to question? How do you want them to see the world now, because your character sort of opened their eyes to something? And usually that's something then that the character's eyes need to be open to as well, usually. And because it's the ending that a lot of people have a struggle to get to, it's important to spend quite a bit of time on this. Now, the feeling goes a lot more for women's fiction and literary fiction, literary book club fiction, whatever you want to call it. Those are usually a little bit more worldview heavy, in the sense of they're kind of teaching the reader either history or the psychology, or something about the world. They're really making a statement about the world. Of course, mystery, thriller, romance, sci-fi, fantasy, they make statements about the world as well, but you know what I mean. Like literary fiction tends to want to be a bit heavier on that. And the thing that you have to be careful about with literary fiction, women's fiction, book club fiction, is that a lot of times the character doesn't actually change that much. So be careful that you're not sort of preaching as the writer to the reader, but that you're showing the reader, you're exploring the world in a worldview through the character, and bringing the reader along for the ride. And yes, your character does need to change by the end, even if you are writing literary fiction. And if you don't want them to change by the end, that is a decision that you should make fully informed of the fact that many people will either not finish the book or not understand what is going on with the book. Now, believe me, there are books that get published where the character doesn't change. In fact, I just read a book in which the character just like disappeared. It was a very strange book, very artsy. So those books do get published. And in fact, I'm not an expert on why or how they get published. If you want your book, to really be picked up, even by the very, the intellectual mainstream, your character needs to have a bit of change. And for that change, you're going to look directly at the climax, which is another thing that my literary and women's fiction, book club fiction clients a lot of times struggle with. Their climax is either highly dramatic, and there's nothing wrong with being highly dramatic, but you don't want it just for drama's sake, just to bring in drama to your book. You want it to be dramatic because it should be dramatic, because that is the one thing that's going to force your main character to actually finally make those final degrees of change to bring the book to an end. Does that make sense? So the drama can't be there for drama's sake. The drama has to be a natural occurrence, and so that the reader understands that this is the only thing that would have forced this character to make the right decision, right? So when you think of that climax, now that you have your character at the beginning and at the end, believe me, this isn't going to just take you this amount of time of listening to the podcast. It could take you hours to days to weeks to really get that down. And now you go into the climax and you really think about the climax as what is it that will push them into being that fully realized character at the end. And if it's not super dramatic, that's okay, as long as it just feels natural to the rest of the story, right? And if it is super dramatic, that's okay, as long as it feels natural to the rest of the story and how you've set it up. It will feel natural if you truly understand the character that you're creating, and how they're going to change and where they're going to go and where they're going to be by the end of it. So I don't want you to freak out. That I know that this feels very theoretical sometimes, very head heavy, and I am high in intellection, and so I like to think a lot, guys. In my Clifton strengths, I like to think and sort of get it clear in my head. And if you don't like to think, maybe you should write it out or talk it out. But you really should understand who your character is. Now, there are those writers out there that you're probably shaking your head and saying that is not my process. I write and I get to know my character as I write, and that's just how I'm going to do it. And that is perfectly fine. Do whatever you want. Make your choices on purpose. What I am trying to do is help out those writers who want to go a little bit faster than that, because discovering your character through writing the first draft can take a really long time, and is usually the reason why the manuscript gets set aside for months, if not years. Okay, because you're not quite grasping where it is that the character should go, because you don't know really where the character started, and you don't know who you want the character to be by the end. Okay, so remember that all the stories that we remember, that we love, that become classics and cult classics, have a change in the character that is satisfying to the reader. So Pride and Prejudice, we might think we always thought she should be with Darcy, but that's not actually true. Darcy's kind of a jerk at the beginning, and Elizabeth, though we don't like to, not side with our heroes, she's kind of a jerk too, right? And so both of them change to become the better person, the better version of themselves, in order to actually be able to live happily ever after as husband and wife. They wouldn't really be that happy if they hadn't gone through that change. And we love the stories because it is satisfying and the progression feels natural and it feels right, right? That's why we love the story. So think about that. Maybe go back and read your favorite book or watch your favorite movie and see how, ask yourself, is the progression natural? How is the character at the beginning? How are they at the end? And what is the climax that pushed them to make that final commitment to the change? Um, that's what we are going to try to do this year. So if you want to just slowly write your novel and discover your character, that is perfectly fine. But if you are looking for a way to go a little bit faster, to get moving, you really want to push yourself and get this done this year, or maybe you're stuck and you want to get unstuck, try these um, these tips that I've talked about in the last half hour or so. And again, let me know if you have any questions, if you have any comments. Don't make them too mean. You can go to catcaldwell.com on the contact page. You can contact me on Instagram. Who knows about TikTok? We might not have that in America anymore. So I don't know. We'll see about that in a week's time. And get on my writer's newsletter, and you can just hit reply there and get me directly on my email. If you're still with me, remember, share the podcast. It really helps. If you want more tips from me, you can go to lessonsandstory.substack.com. I forgot to tell you that before. If you want to, if you can always help me by subscribing to the show and sharing the podcast. But if you want to support me, you can support me on Substack, lessonsandstory.substack.com. And since I am a one-woman show producing all of this and doing my books, every little bit is helpful. I appreciate all of it. So next week we will have interviews again. We'll have a couple more so that you can hear from other authors and not just hear me. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful week. Sorry that the show is going out a bit late. But yeah, catch up on the old shows, and I will see you next week.